All right, welcome to the video. My name is Nabil. I'm 27 years old. I've scaled several businesses to 7 and even 8 figures and generated over $15 million for my clients in the past 3 years. While doing that, I personally take home 6 figures each and every month. And in this video, I'm going to go through my entire theory on how to scale online service-based businesses, whether that's an agency, info, or some type of service that you provide digitally. Now, before we go further, let me be very clear that the information that I'll go into inside of this video, if you actually apply it, can make you a lot of money. But I don't know who you are. I don't know how smart you are. I don't know how much work you actually do. And so there's no guarantee. This is not a financial claim, but your results will come if you apply yourself. It depends entirely on how you show up as a person. But everything I'm about to go into here is the exact information that if I had when I was getting started out 2-3 years ago, I would have gotten and created success way quicker. Now, the first thing to keep in mind as just a principle that you want to orient yourself around with these types of businesses is that it's a cash flowing business, and a cash flowing business is dependent on profitability. You're not building this business to exit. You're not building this business to build equity value. You're building this business because you're getting paid heavily to do it. And the amount of money that you get paid off of the business is equivalent to it being worth your time. What do I mean by that? You have a machine, which you can think of as the business, and then you have inputs and you have outputs. The output of this business is profit. It's nothing else. It's just pure profit month over month. You want to ideally have somewhere around 40 to 60% profit margin. You can have a little bit more. It's possible. You can get up to 85, 90%, especially with AI leverage type businesses where the marketing is done through low cost efforts, which we'll talk about in a sec here. And it can go as low as 25% if you are focused on a period of heavy expansion where you're spending a lot of money on marketing, or you make some big expensive purchases helping with fulfillment. So it can fluctuate, but ideally you want to stay as close to 40 to 60% as you possibly can. And you want to understand the core principle of, again, this machine, and the profit on the other end is the goal of you running this business. You're doing this because you want to get rich. That's why you're here. You can do this business, get rich, make a few $1,000,000, and then take that capital and put it into other businesses that might be more so taking you from a 7 and 8 figure level to a 9 figure level. But you're not going to do this business to get to 9 figures. It's just you're playing the wrong game. But also, if you don't have any money at all, if you're under 6 figures in the bank, it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, it can make sense for you to pursue a software business, but it generally doesn't make sense for 99.9% of people. If you're just getting started on business, you have lower levels of complexity in terms of your understanding of how business works, and you're more of a beginner with your capital and your experience. It makes way more sense to build your capital reserve while gaining experience to then parlay that into something that can get you to 9 figures. So anyways, without digressing too much, I'm going to come back to the point at hand, which is you have this business, which is a machine, and the core essence of that machine is to produce profit. You put your inputs in, which is your time, your capital, your resources, your energy. All these inputs go into this machine, and the machine then spits out profit. That's the intent of how this business is meant to be structured. Now, there's 5 things that actually matter to that equation. What does the machine actually look like? 5 components. You have traffic, you have leads, you have calls, you have clients, and then you have case studies. Only 5 productive actions. Each of these things matter. They all exist and they are codependent on each other. And what you want to do is you want to get traffic. You want to turn traffic into leads. You want to turn leads into calls. You want to turn calls into clients. And then of course you want to turn clients into case studies. That's one of the biggest things that people get wrong, which I'll explain later on in this video. But all of these things matter, and everything else in essence is a waste. Everything should relate to the assembly line of traffic to leads, leads to calls, calls to clients, clients to case studies. Now, again, think of it like manufacturing. It's 5 machines in a row fitting into this one big machine, which is the business itself. And if one part of the machine is not operating, meaning, for example, if you are getting traffic and you are getting leads, but you're not getting calls, then as a result of that, the machine stops working. If you are getting traffic, you're getting leads, and you're able to convert those leads into calls, but then you don't get clients out of those calls, inherently that machine is not working. So what I mean to say is that each thing is important, and you're only as strong as one of the components out of the 5 components. Meaning if one thing is holding you back, one thing is the constraint, the next stage won't evolve until that initial constraint gets fixed. More specifically, let's say you're getting good traffic and leads, but you're not getting calls, then because you're not getting calls, you'll be constrained in your ability to get clients as well. So all of these things play into each other, and each thing matters to ensure cohesiveness within the entire entire business. Now, this information, if you're somebody who you're in business, you're doing 10, 20, 50, $100,000 a month already, maybe this isn't something that is a new concept to you. Maybe it might be a new concept to you, but even if you're somebody that has already heard this, it's good to have a refresher around this, because a lot of business is just thinking about things in a simple way. And that simple thing right now that I want to go into is that each thing matters. And as long as each thing is being done well, then you're going to be progressing really well. And by the way, if you're getting started out, the biggest thing that a lot of people come to me and say is like, you need case studies to get traffic, but you need clients to get case studies. So it's like, how do you figure that out? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And fundamentally, it's a bit of a paradox when you're first starting out. And that's also why you need to kind of come in with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, where you have to understand that inherently, given that you don't have case studies where somebody else might, you have to see that as one of the facets as to how you compete within the marketplace, and know that you have this limiting factor. But as a result of that, you have to carry that limiting factor and remove the downside of that through doing something more that the competitor might not do. Maybe, for example, you give more in your service, or maybe you have a higher risk reversal, a better guarantee. We'll talk about that more. The point is, know that the problem exists, stop whining about it, understand that it's the nature of the game. And by the way, when you do have the case studies, you now have that as a moat that the other people won't have. And frankly, at the current climate that we're in 2026 right now, it's a bit of a different game where you don't necessarily need case studies to get clients. You could still get clients without case studies. Anyways, let's get back into it. Traffic obviously costs something. There's a cost associated with traffic. There's 3 ways that you can get traffic, and there's associated investments out of each, either in your time or in your money. Those are the 2 types of investments. And really everything ultimately is money, because even time has an ascribed amount of money value. But either way, traffic requires investments. There's 3 types, and your business must be designed so you spend less getting traffic than the revenue it brings. The most important metric to profitability that you should focus on for your service-based business is the ratio between your LTV, which is how much money you make over the entire lifetime of a client working with you, relative to the CAC, which is the amount you spend to acquire the customer. As long as you can have a massive gap between your LTV to CAC, you're always going to be massively profitable. Typically, people lack profit or have issues with profit when their LTV goes downward and their CAC goes upward, and there's a little bit of an equilibrium between the two. And so you want to try your best to build as big of a gap as you possibly can between the two. And as an example, in a very simple term, you want to make sure that whatever you spend to acquire the customer, you make that amount back or more, pending as well your cost to fulfill. And keep in mind that you will lose people at each stage. Regardless of which traffic source you use, you will lose people at each stage, and that's normal. But going into each of the ways that you get traffic, there's 3. You have cold outreach, which it costs time, not money. It has faster results, but it does not compound. When I say cold outreach, I mean either doing cold SMS, cold calling, cold email, cold outbound DMs, cold outreach, door-to-door sales as an example is another form of cold outreach. So it's basically just having a list of potential people that might be interested, going into them cold, doing the outreach, and then tailoring it such that you get them to be a booked call on calendar. Again, costs time, not money. It's very time intensive, but it doesn't cost a lot of money. So if you're just getting started out, for a lot of people, it's a good way to get started because the cost of failure is not as high. And I'll go into the next one, which is ads. Ads has a high cost of failure because it costs money, not time. And a lot of beginners have a lack of money. And so that's ultimately why they're doing the business in the first place. And if they put the money into ads and they don't know what they're doing, then ultimately they just end up burning the money. And so it's not the most ideal outcome. But if you know what you're doing, ads are the way you scale, because ads don't cost time, they cost money, and they get fast results, and they don't compound, but you're able to attract, if you understand how to do ads the right way, the exact person that's the exact ICP to buy your solution at the exact time and get them onto a call in a way that you can kind of force them into it. Outreach, cold outreach is like you're reaching out to people cold. Ads is you're architecting a funnel system that's engineered to drive traffic onto a landing page and go through the direct response flow to ultimately get on a call with you and buy your offer. And so it really is scalable, and it does create success, but it's not for everybody, and it doesn't compound in the way that the next one does, which is content. Organic content costs a lot of time, It doesn't cost as much money usually unless you have like a really expensive overhead, but generally people can start relatively inexpensively. Most people have an iPhone or some form of smartphone that has a good camera. All you have to do is know what to say, which you can use ChatGPT, Claude, Manus, and come up with some really good scripts that are effective. Pick up your phone, start recording, put it together and post it. And the thing with the content is with the social media platforms, they grow over time because they have a longer period of shelf life in the time that they're actually being consumed by people. Meaning when you first put a YouTube video out, you might have some viewers, but then the longer it's there, the more time that viewers might land onto it because it gets suggested or it's on the search history, or it has a compounding nature. It's an asset, it's digital real estate that grows over time because people will eventually land on it as they go through the different social media platforms that you might post on. And so all three of these things, as I mentioned, they either have a cost of time or money, and they all have their own facets that are beneficial. And generally, I think content is like the branding layer that should exist regardless of if you do ads or cold outreach, because it can serve as a nurture mechanism rather than a top of funnel way through which you can get clients. But as a nurture mechanism, middle of funnel or bottom of funnel, there is still some value in driving traffic to value dense information that will make it easier for them to convert in the sales process. So I think content is something you should do regardless of which path you go in. But those are the three essential ways that you can get top of funnel attention and traffic. And you don't want to overcomplicate it. You want to pick the thing that makes the most sense for you. So if you're under 10K per month, probably focus on cold outreach. And if you're above that, then you can start looking into ads. Ads is the thing that really creates scale. So I'm a big believer in ads. I spend a lot of money on ads, and I think it is something that can make you a lot of money, but you just have to be careful when you get into it. Now, what is a funnel actually? A funnel isn't just some landing pages, it's the entire system. So when you think of a funnel, you think of traffic, leads, sales process, offer, all of those things working together. It's a holistic machine, and we measure every single metric and the actions that influence it because everything works together. Remember when I said the assembly line, if one thing is not working, if, for example, leads are not getting booked into meetings, that's not working. That's going to make the entire assembly line fall flat. And so you want to make sure that everything works within the funnel so that the funnel can position as much top of funnel attention into case studies as humanly possible. Keeping in mind there will be slippage, but you want to make that as minimal as possible. Now, with that said, what are the different parts of the funnel? You first start off with traffic to lead conversion, which is, are people actually responding? So what portion of your traffic convert to leads? If, for example, you have ads, what's your opt-in rate? If you have cold outreach, what's your response rate? This is influenced by how strong your offer is, how good your messaging is, how good your content is. Obviously, outreach volume, who you're reaching out to, the sales assets, your niche. There's so many different factors that influence that. But that's the first point of potential constraint. How much traffic are you getting, and how much of that traffic is converting into leads? And if you are struggling with this, then you want to understand that it's probably because your offer or messaging is the constraint, and that's the thing you want to focus on. The next one is, now you have a lead, let's get it to the call. So what's the lead to call rate? Are they convinced enough? Do you interest them enough for them to want to hop on a call with you? What portion of leads actually end up booking a call? And this is influenced generally by offer strength, your landing page, your VSL, your email sequences, your webinars, your risk reduction in your offers. There's a whole set of things, your setting process, the way you communicate with the lead inside of the DMs or inside of the email sequences, such that you drive enough interest from them to get them onto a call, is also extremely important. I can make a whole video on this because a lot of people, in my eyes, do it the wrong way. But this metric shows how good is your nurture process. Remember when I said the branding layer? If you have good content, for example, they can be a lead, and then they might search you up on YouTube, and they might see about your content or on a website or something. And those are the nurturing elements that might make it easier for somebody that's in that lead stage to convert into the call stage. But this is also a very important part of the entire process. And again, if you know this stuff, just keep in mind that like when you think about the stuff from first principles, it might give you new ideation that you didn't have before. So I still think there is some value here, but this is all a lot for people that are just in the earlier stages that are getting started. But it's not complicated to do 100K per month. It really isn't. Going on to the next one, call to close rate. What portion of your calls actually close? This is a point where a lot of people fail as well. I think the biggest points of constraint for most people is lead to call rate if they have traffic dialed in. If they don't have traffic dialed in, it's just traffic. But if you have traffic dialed in, a lot of people just don't know how to convert that traffic into calls. And if they do know how to convert it into calls, they don't know how to close those calls. This one is the money metric. It's essentially your close rate. and it's influenced by your case studies, the way that you can sell, your sales skill, the offer that you actually have, how well you follow up, how well you filter leads, and the type of people that you actually end up speaking to. Obviously, your ICP is very important inside of this too. And again, most people fail here because they get calls, but they just can't close. And so that's why I think sales is very important, because when you know sales, then you can make the previous things work and get cash through the door, which could then allow you to spend more money on advertising as an example to create more scale. But either way, the next one is close to case study rate. This is a thing that I really think a lot of people overlook. Remember I said the game is LTV to CAC ratio? Well, if you want to have a good LTV to CAC ratio, you need to get case studies. You need clients winning. You need clients to have success with whatever you're selling. One, to protect your reputation, but also it's highly important to deliver your service and get case studies so that you can feed that back into top of funnel marketing. Because when you have a lot of case studies, it makes it way easier for people to go through the process of becoming a lead, becoming a call, and actually closing, because the belief that they have, the level of trust that they have in wanting to work with you will be way higher. Because we are in this situation right now where there is a level of market sophistication, and you can differentiate yourself with AI and these types of things, but there is generally a level of market sophistication where the buyer is a little bit paranoid and is a little bit oversold, and they have this concern and a lack of trust in wanting to work with you because of just so much fugazi inside of the marketplace. And so if you can genuinely deliver value, and if you can genuinely have happy clients, it'll be easier for you to sell new clients, but also it'll be easier for you to make more money off of the existing client base that you have, which will drive your LTV up, which will make it so that how much money you spend to acquire the customer on the front end is not the core lever that dictates profitability, because you're making money again and again and again from delivering good client service to your clients, and overall having a wholesome business that feels good to run. There's also a thing of feeling good about the business that you're running. And that's also highly important, because when you feel good about what you're running, you have a high level of passion around it. And I think passion in business and interest and love for what you do is so crucial to you actually rolling through the punches and going through the turbulent times that might come up as you scale your business. So all of this matters, but I think this is one of the things that a lot of people overlook, because they think of all the things around getting the close, they get the close, and then they just stop focusing on what's next, and they go back to getting more closes. And it's just a recipe for failure, especially in the long run, but even in the short term, it inhibits the amount of scale that you can create. Again, as I mentioned, it is an efficiency thing. So if you have 100% efficiency in traffic, 100% efficiency in leads, but say 50% efficiency in calls, then whatever happens after calls diminishes in efficiency as well. So again, it's a funnel. So if a bunch of people drop off in the funnel at one specific area, then everything below that also has significant drop off as well, because there's less throughput. So you want to make sure that you understand your constraint of those 5 components, and you focus your time and effort on solving that constraint. If you have good traffic coming in, but you're not getting calls booked, then you want to focus on your lead to call rate. If you are getting a lot of calls booked and you're just not getting closes, it does not make sense for you to spend all your time focused on traffic or focused on leads to books. It makes way more sense to focus and apply your attention towards actually converting those booked meetings. So whatever your constraint is, that is where you should focus and apply all your time. And when you do the financial model and the economics of what this looks like, it becomes even more evident that really the game is just identifying the constraint inside of your business, solving that constraint as quickly as possible, and then going to the next constraint, and kind of having each thing level up until you get to the point of, I guess, satisfaction inside of your business. I think in these types of businesses, you can get to the point where you're making 30 to 50 million. It's possible you can make more than that, but typically it's harder to do. It's more rare. So these businesses are great to do 100 to 500K per month in profit, but trying to do like 5 million in profit as an example per month is harder to do in this business compared to doing a different type of business. I mean, frankly, it's just hard to do in general, but either way, I digress. Let's go back to the point. You want to stop complaining, right? You don't want to complain. You want to understand your numbers. You want to know the specifics. You want to see the thing as a machine. And you have to understand that the more information you collect, it's your responsibility to collect this information, because when you have the data, then you're operating off of data, not your feelings, not your intuition. And then it makes it easier for you to be a cold, hard operator rather than somebody making decisions off of emotion, which is never good. And money comes from people, by the way. Keep in mind that money comes from people. These types of businesses are very people-centric. In B2B, they only buy if they believe they'll make more money back. And so your job is to make the prospects feel certain that they'll get an ROI. It's always about making clients more money, zero exceptions. So what I mean by that is people will pay you if they feel as though they're going to make more money by paying you. So they need to have and clearly see the tangible outcome. And the more clear you can make it for them, the easier it's going to be for them to pay you. And that goes into like the offer that you're selling as well and who you're targeting. If you go to a business that's doing like say 100K a month and the core pain that they have is in say content, and they're not able to convert leads in that call stage, let's say call to client stage. And the reason that they're not able to do that is because of trust, but because they don't have enough content or branding out there. And you go to that business and you try to sell them something around automating their fulfillment, doesn't make sense. If they're a sharp operator, obviously they're going to focus on what's the constraint, and you're going to come to them and you're going to provide and pitch a solution to them that's not their constraint. So they're not going to probably want to work with you because they don't see that tangible ROI. But if you go and solve that constraint of them going from calls to clients, now they're going to see the amount of money very clearly that you're able to make them. And if you're able to make them $10,000, you can easily ask for $5,000 in return because you're solving the exact pain that results in more income. So you want to make sure that you lean on the idea of certainty. And there's 3 parts of certainty. Number 1, you have an explicit promise, which is a quantifiable return, like make X amount of money in Y time. Then you have proof, which is evidence backing your claim through either case studies, ROI calculators, your expertise, or just being able to plainly show the logic that would follow to serve as evidence to show that there is this explicit promise being able to be made. And then you want to have some form of risk adjustment. So like either a guarantee. And when you first start out, you want to take the risk in the business. As you scale up, when you have more case studies, you can have the client take the risk. But when you're first starting out, you want to take the risk where you want to say that if this doesn't work, I will guarantee that I will give you your money back, as an example, because it just makes it a strong offer that's easier for them to ultimately buy. And then you just have to do the work so that you can create the outcome, get the case studies, and then flip it where the client takes the risk. But it's all a game of knowing where you're at and you know, the game you're playing. But with that all said, there's so many things to go into. You can watch the other videos that I have that explain offer, niche, and all the other things of how you can get started. But the main things you want to keep in mind is that this business game is meant for profit. You have this machine that is meant to generate profit. You have inputs that are going into the machine for the sake of the profit that comes out of it. And you as an operator want to operate the machine in the best way possible to produce as much profit as you possibly can. And that goes down to identifying the assembly line, identifying the constraint within each point of the assembly line, and then fixing those constraints as quickly as possible such that the machine starts to produce more profit. So with all that said, know the game you're in, know the machine that you're building, understand the theory of constraints, understand the assembly line, understand the whole point of this business is to produce profit. Identify what your particular constraint is within your business at this current stage, solve it as quickly as possible, and you'll start to make profit. Get to a couple million, and then you can start focusing on bigger plays like software or private equity or whatever it is for you. Again, no income claims, no guarantees. This is all information that can help you, but you have to ultimately apply it. And so either way, if you enjoyed, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.